Everything you think you know about the world's most prolific female serial killer is wrong. You've heard the legend Countess Elizabeth Báthory, the Blood Countess, who bathed in the blood of 650 virgins to maintain her youth. It's the stuff of horror movies and Halloween costumes. But what if I told you that the real story is actually worse than the myth? That the truth has been buried under centuries of sensationalism because it's too disturbing for textbooks to handle. You don't learn this in history class. 1. The virgin pool that started it all the year is 1609. You're a 14-year-old peasant girl in rural Hungary, and your mother just received an offer that seems like salvation. The local countess needs chambermaids for her castle. The pay is triple what your family makes in a year. The work is easy, just helping the noblewoman with her daily beauty regimen. But here's what your mother doesn't know: Elizabeth Báthory has already murdered over 200 girls your age. The recruitment process was diabolically systematic. Báthory's servants specifically targeted villages hit by famine or plague families so desperate they'd hand over their daughters without asking questions. The girls were promised education, fine clothes, and a chance to serve Hungarian nobility. Their parents received a small sum of money and a signed document guaranteeing their daughter's safety. What happened next wasn't bathing in blood, that's Hollywood nonsense. It was something far more surgical, more methodical, more industrial. The first girl died in January 1602. Her name was Catalin, and she was 12. Báthory had her stripped naked in the castle's main hall, where the countess personally examined her like a farmer inspecting livestock. Girl's skin was pale, unblemished, perfect for what Báthory had planned. She was given a small room in the castle's east wing, told she'd be trained as a lady's maid. She lasted 3 weeks, but it gets worse. 2. The anti-agging experiments they don't teach you about. You won't find this in any textbook, but Elizabeth Báthory kept detailed records of her experiments. These documents were destroyed after her arrest, but 3 of her servants later described them under torture. The countess wasn't just killing these girls, she was conducting the world's most horrific anti-agging research. Her methodology was disturbingly scientific. She'd isolate victims in different castle chambers, subjecting them to specific tortures while documenting which produced the most dramatic effects on her own skin. Some girls were kept in ice-cold water for hours, their blue lips and frostbitten skin compared against Báthory's complexion in her silver mirror. Others were burned with hot irons in precise patterns, their screams echoing through stone corridors as the countess timed how long it took for their suffering to make her feel invigorated. The most disturbing experiments involved what modern doctors would recognize as blood transfusions, except Báthory was drinking the blood, not receiving it intravenously. She believed that consuming the blood of young virgins would transfer their youth to her agging body. But here's the detail that will keep you awake tonight: she didn't just drink it, she had it processed. The girls were bled slowly over days, their blood collected in silver bowls, then mixed with wine and herbs to mask the taste. Báthory consumed up to a pint daily, timing her doses to coincide with the new moon, because she believed lunar cycles enhanced absorption. Wait until you hear what happened to the survivors. 3. The Factory of Death. By 1608, Elizabeth Báthory had industrialized murder. She'd converted entire sections of Echtersay Castle into what can only be described as a human processing facility. The Virgin Pool, a term her servants used, wasn't a bath. It was a holding area where up to 50 girls were kept in conditions that make modern factory farms look humane. The girls were fed just enough to keep them alive, but not enough to maintain body weight. Báthory believed thinner girls had purer blood. They were given water from the castle's cistern, which was deliberately contaminated with small amounts of arsenic. This served 2 purposes: it weakened the girls' resistance, and Báthory believed it purified their blood of earthy impurities. The killing followed a production schedule. Every Tuesday and Friday, 2 to 3 girls were selected based on Báthory's immediate needs. The process was efficient: a small room in the castle's tower, a leather apron for the countess, and instruments that would make a modern surgeon weep. The girls were kept alive as long as possible because Báthory believed suffering concentrated the blood's vital essence. But here's what historians deliberately omit: Elizabeth Báthory was conducting these murders while her husband was away at war, fighting the Ottoman Empire. She was running a death factory in the heart of Europe, while her country celebrated her family as heroes. It gets so much worse. 4. The modern parallels that will haunt you. Everything you think you know about Elizabeth Báthory makes her seem like a medieval anomaly, a monster from a barbaric past. But what if I told you her methods have direct parallels to modern crimes? Báthory's selection process mirrors how human traffickers operate today. She targeted impoverished families, offered them money for their children, and used official documents to legitimize the transactions. Her virgin pool was essentially a holding facility for victims, not unlike those used by contemporary traffickers. The systematic documentation of her experiments anticipates the meticulous record-keeping found in modern serial killer cases. But here's the connection that will make your skin crawl. Elizabeth Báthory was conducting her murders during the same period when European nobility was beginning to understand human anatomy. The Countess had access to the latest medical texts. She wasn't just a sadist, she was a proto-scientist conducting illegal research on human subjects, like a medieval Joseph Mengele. The most disturbing parallel, her beauty obsession. Báthory murdered hundreds of girls because she believed their youth could be transferred to her. In 2024, we have entire industries selling young blood plasma transfusions to wealthy clients seeking anti-aging benefits. The FDA has had to specifically warn against this practice. Elizabeth Báthory wasn't medieval, she was centuries ahead of her time. 5. The numbers don't add up, and that's terrifying. Mainstream historians will tell you Elizabeth Báthory killed 650 girls. They base this on testimony from her servants, who claimed to see lists of victims in the Countess's handwriting. But here's what they won't tell you: that number is probably too low. During the investigation of Báthory's crimes, authorities found evidence of at least 300 bodies buried around Etchetasset Castle. But the murders had been going on for over a decade, and Báthory's servants testified that most victims were burned in the castle's massive ovens or buried in unmarked grave across her vast estates. The truly horrifying detail: Elizabeth Báthory kept meticulous records of her expenses. In her account books, investigators found entries for special clothing for victims, medicinal supplies that matched the torture implements described by survivors, and payments to local officials to ensure privacy. These entries span 12 years and suggest a victim count closer to 1,000. But wait until you hear why she was finally caught. 6. The downfall that almost didn't happen. Elizabeth Báthory's arrest in 1610 only happened because she made one crucial mistake. She started targeting girls from minor noble families instead of just peasants. When the daughter of a local magistrate disappeared after being invited to the castle, her father launched an investigation that couldn't be bought off or intimidated into silence. But here's what will make you lose faith in justice. Even then, authorities hesitated. Báthory was one of the most powerful women in Hungary, from one of its most prestigious families. The king himself owed her family massive debts. The investigation took months because officials were terrified of the political consequences. When they finally raided Etchetasset Castle, they found something that made seasoned soldiers vomit: a room filled with girls in various stages of torture, medical instruments still warm from use, and Báthory herself calmly eating breakfast while wearing a dress stained with blood her servants claimed was wine. The trial was a farce. Báthory never appeared in court. Her family influence was still too strong. Her servants were tortured and executed, but the Countess herself was merely walled up in a room in her own castle, given food through a slot for 4 years until she died. No official records of her execution exist because there was no execution. She died in 1614, but her story was just beginning. 7. The cover-up that continues today. Everything you think you know about Elizabeth Báthory comes from a 1729 book written by a Jesuit priest who never met her, never saw the trial records, and based his account on local legends and gossip. The bathing in blood detail that was added to make the story more marketable to readers who wanted supernatural explanations for human evil. Modern historians continue this sanitization. They focus on whether the number was 650 or 300 victims, whether she was truly guilty or the victim of a conspiracy by relatives who wanted her property. They debate whether she actually bathed in blood or just drank it, as if that distinction matters to the dead girls. What they won't discuss is the industrial scale of her crimes. They won't compare her experiments to modern medical research ethics. They won't connect her beauty obsession to contemporary anti-agging industries. They won't examine how her victim selection process mirrors modern human trafficking, because that would force us to confront uncomfortable truths about our own society. You don't learn this in history class, because Elizabeth Báthory wasn't a medieval monster, she was terrifyingly modern. She turned human suffering into a beauty treatment, industrialized murder for personal benefit, and used her privilege to avoid justice. She wasn't the product of a barbaric past. She was a preview of what humans can become when wealth and power remove all consequences. The real horror isn't that Elizabeth Báthory bathed in blood. It's that she didn't need to. She'd already discovered something far more valuable in a world that values youth and beauty above human life. You can get away with murder if you have enough money and the right family name. The Countess who tried to stay young forever succeeded in one way. Her story remains forever young, constantly retold and resold, while her victims stay forgotten, their names lost to history except as numbers in a body count. And that might be the most disturbing detail of all.